Welcome everyone to IsisParenting's Sleep Support Webinar and Chat. My name is Nancy Holtzman. I'm a mom and baby nurse educator, board-certified lactation consultant, and board-certified in pediatrics. I'm the Vice President of Clinical Content and Online Learning here at IsisParenting outside of Boston, Massachusetts. We've also just opened 4 centers in the Atlanta, Georgia area and are opening 5 centers in Dallas, Fort Worth this week. So we hope to see you at one of our centers soon. And if you don't live near an ISIS center, hopefully we'll come to where you are sometime soon. But for now, you can shop online and enjoy our online learning as well. With me today is my friend and colleague, Megan Casano. And every Tuesday at 12 noon, of course, we gather to talk about infant and toddler sleep. And today we are going to talk about a toddler and preschool approach called silent return to bed. And this is for the child who continues to pop out of bed, who's not in a crib and gets right up and is looking for some company in the middle of the night or at bedtime. So I'll let Meg finish her introduction and start today's topic.
Okay, thanks everyone. Thanks for joining us. We usually do have a smaller group on the toddler topics, but we know that these are such a great resource for people to be able to come to the IsisParenting website and check these out later. So even you guys, as your babies grow, some of you have little babies, can always be having these as a resource for the future. So thanks for coming. And this topic, I've done several individual consults with families lately, and so I wanted to sort of share some of what we teach here at ISIS, and it's near and dear to my heart because, as Nancy knows, I was sharing with our sleep team a couple of weeks ago that I was doing something similar to this with my 2 and 3/4-year-old who was trying to ditch her nap, and I knew it was too early. So that's kind of what prompted us to do this. But anyway, when we say silent return to bed, we're talking about very much a parent-led behavioral type sleep intervention for toddlers and preschoolers. This is for children, older babies, children, preschoolers who are out of the crib. So they'd be in a toddler bed or a mattress on the floor, or a setup like that. When we are talking about silent return to bed, we like to be really upfront with expectations, and we ask parents to consider their baby's age and what they're asking them to accomplish. For a toddler who is under age 2.5, it's really difficult for the child to completely absorb the concept that their parent is asking them to do, which is stay in your bed all night and sleep there all night, particularly at certain times of the night when the child's sleep pressure is lower. They're in different types of sleep, and it's more likely that, for them to get up and come looking for mom or dad. Your young 2-year-old, 20-month-old, 26-month-old might not mean to forget and get up and get out of bed, but sometimes just developmentally they might be too young. So if your child is under age 2.5, you might continue to need to be open to some partial night parenting, especially in that last third of the night when it tends to be a more difficult time for babies to stay asleep. Okay, so I'm going to jump right in here with silent return to bed, how you do it, what you do. Remember, again, this is for babies. I keep saying babies. This is for toddlers and preschoolers who are popping up out of their beds more frequently than you'd like. So one of the most important things that you need to do is determine your child's appropriate bedtime. Sometimes what you would like your child's bedtime to be isn't actually what your child can currently achieve. And so one of the things we work with families in an individual sleep consult is helping to figure out, where is your child right now? You want to meet your child at the time they can actually achieve sleep. And so even if you would like your child's bedtime to be, say, 7:30, but they're not currently falling asleep ever until 9 p.m., you might actually be starting your intervention at that much later time of, say, 9 p.m. The important thing to keep in mind, and we've talked about in past webinars, is that your child's exposure to darkness is very much a factor in solidifying your child's bedtime. So if at some point you would like your child to be able to go to sleep earlier than, say, 9 p.m. in this example, you would have to have your child's little body in darkness starting from your target bedtime. So you might be turning off your screens, turning off your bright lights, closing your drapes, maybe doing some quiet hangout time in a really dimly lit room with your child starting at 7:30. But then as you're moving closer to your child's achievable bedtime, which may, again in this example, be closer to 9, you would start winding down, doing your bedtime routine, and getting ready to begin silent return to bed. Okay, this is really important because if you try to put your child to bed at a time when they cannot achieve sleep, you will be setting yourself up for an extended amount of resistance. We know that, really regardless of the age, it's not just for toddlers or babies, when you're trying to make a change, your toddler will tend to resist the change as long as they physically can. They'll try to withstand their sleep pressure or sleepiness as long as they can. And so do both of yourselves a favor and meet them where they are. In fact, 15 minutes later than your child's actual achievable bedtime may even be helpful to you in increasing that sleep pressure and causing your child to fall asleep more quickly. As you go through with your plan and your silent returning to bed and teaching your child that you'd like him to stay in bed, then as you both get better at this, you can back your bedtime up to more of that desired bedtime. You make whenever you move your bedtime with your child, you make your changes slowly. About 15 minutes a night is just fine. The only thing I will often say about that is if your child is exceptionally overtired, like for example, they missed a nap one day, or they had an exceptionally short nap, or they're sick, or they got immunizations, whatever the case may be, yes, of course, it's always okay to go extra early on a night like that. But on a regular basis, you are actually going to start your bedtime a few minutes later than your child's achievable bedtime on those first couple of nights. Step 2, make sure you allow time for your bedtime routine. So sometimes parents ask, well, if I want my child going to bed at 8, does that mean I start my bedtime routine at 8? You actually want to start your bedtime routine before 8 and give yourself enough time so that you can be finished with your routine and have your baby going into bed and doing your final tuck-in at your desired falling asleep time. With your preschool or toddler's bedtime routine, make sure you have an ending point. It's kind of defined. Everybody knows when the end is and what the ending point is. You might want to check out, as a little homework, the webinars we've recorded on bedtime routines for toddlers and preschoolers, or older toddlers, older toddlers. That came out funny. The biggest thing, remember, toddlers and preschoolers like things that are ritualistic, repetitive, predictable. I was laughing and saying, oh my gosh, I've been reading this same book to Charlotte for like 2 weeks in a row at nap time. I'm getting so tired of it. But she loves it, and for now, I don't want to rock the boat and change anything on her until we're super, super solid. So just be nice and regular, nice and predictable. Follow your bedtime routine steps in order so your child knows exactly what's coming next. And Nancy, I love this picture. I guess this is one of your Twitter followers. This dad and his son, do they not look exactly alike? That's so cute. Okay. So now that you have determined your baby's appropriate bedtime, the right bedtime, you've allowed enough time for your bedtime routine is nice and regular, and you've done your final check-in, kiss goodnight. By the way, it goes without saying that, and Nancy, maybe you have a link to post, that your child's sleep environment would be ideal in all of this too, the level of darkness, the level of coolness, and the level of quiet. And so now that you've done your final kiss goodnight, now you're going to actually try to leave the room. Now, let me just say, I'm going to come back to this in a later slide, because you might be saying, well, that's not going to go well. My child's not going to like that a whole lot. So there are slower versions, there are slower modifications, there are other ways we can incorporate different sleep intervention strategies into silent returning to bed. But the overall premise of how to do it is going to be the same. And so that's what I'm going to discuss here. When you attempt to leave the room, you want to be ready to, every time your child gets up, you're going to return your child to their bed. And when you're doing this, you want to be prepared, again, for your child to resist this change as long as they can. You want to be really consistent. You want to return, if you so much as see your child dipping a toe off the mattress, you're going to go right back in and gently place your child back on the bed. You want to be sure you're not talking about it. You've already done your bedtime routine. Your child already knows, what to expect and what's going to be coming. So you'd want to try not to, beg, plead, remind, coerce, bribe. You try not to do any of that, because if your child's getting frustrated or irritated at you, she's really not hearing what you're trying to say to her anyway. So like I said in the beginning, this is a behavioral approach. You just keep carrying your child back to bed, back to bed, back to bed as many times as you have to. I'm going to go through some more of kind of the nuances of this plan in later slides. But the overall premise is, if your child gets up, return your child to bed. Okay, so some things to keep in mind. Before you begin this, you do want to evaluate your physical ability to do this. Like, for example, are you newly postpartum and you're not supposed to be doing any physical activity? Do you suffer from back pain? Like, are you prone to sort of tweaking your back and then you're going to be in pain for a week? You want to think about those things, because this can get physical. If you have a 3-year-old who weighs, 35 pounds and she's launching herself off her bed and sprinting into you, or she's going boneless in a pile on the floor, you might want to think about what, realistically, if that would work for you. Sometimes it's helpful if you actually don't wait until your child is, running full steam after you across the floor. You might actually sort of stay close, watch from the doorway, maybe use a video monitor, and as soon as you see her making a move to get up, you actually intervene before she's even fully out of her bed to sort of cut down on some of that physicalness. You again want to make sure you're staying very quiet. Use nighttime murmuring. Some people call this a nighttime mantra, for example. Quiet shushing. You can whisper something very repetitive and boring, like, "Mommy's here, it's night time, I love you, I'll be checking on you." Just something, if you want to say something to your child, make sure that it's not dependent on what your child is saying to you. It's just sort of these quiet whisperings reminding her that you're here, but it's bedtime. Stay in your night mommy and night daddy mode, meaning you are boring, calm, neutral. You don't want to be turning things on or off. You don't want to be starting new sleep routine items, like you don't want to go back and be turning on music or turning on sound projector, light projectors, or anything like that. You are just, in all of your responses, you're very boring and neutral, because remember, even positive interaction is positive, but even negative interaction is positive too. As you're returning your child to their mattress over and over, do you make sure you stay calm and gentle with your child, even if you feel angry or frustrated? When you return your child back to their bed, instead of doing a whole nother tuck-in, reorganizing, handing of blankies and re-kissing and all that, just place her back on the bed. You've already done your tuck-in. You could always go back and recover and resettle your child later when they've fallen into their deep sleep. But at bedtime or in the middle of the night, you just keep it simple. You're just showing your child where you want them to be and where you want them to stay. As you're doing these returns to bed, it's helpful if you can have one consistent caregiver during one set of returns. For example, if mom did bedtime routine that night, and tucked in and started doing the returns, mom would want to finish returning baby or toddler until she stayed in her bed. And here again, remember, your child could resist you for upwards of even an hour. So you might sort of see this flurry of getting out of bed. Your child might get out of bed, 25 or 50 times, and then she's sort of calm and she stays in bed for a few minutes, and you think, okay, we did it. And then there might be another little burst of energy, and she gets out of bed, 20 more times, and then she's calm. So just sort of be prepared for it to take a while. If you have to switch caregivers, like, you're exhausted, you can't keep going, you're getting too frustrated, and someone else has to step in to relieve you, it's okay, it's not the end of the world. But if you can, try to be consistent until your child falls asleep. And then in a different part of the night, a different caregiver could respond if needed. Okay, Nancy, you have questions for me? Did I miss something?
I have some questions. You're going to hate my questions.
Uh-oh.
I know. I'm really going to challenge you. So what if you have, I have a whole bunch of what ifs. So what if you have a really smart, wily toddler? And I know we've addressed this on other webinars, but what if during this part where the toddler keeps hopping up out of bed, she says things like, but I'm thirsty, but I have to go to the potty. So these, I know you call those multiple requests, but how do you address the child who's been crying and working with you on this for half an hour, and then she keeps saying, but I'm thirsty, Mom, but I'm thirsty, Mom.
Yeah. So then you're starting to think, well, gosh, maybe she is thirsty. She's been hollering at me for 20 minutes. So, you can sort of decide what you feel like is a reasonable or unreasonable demand. I mean, definitely meet as many of your child's needs as you possibly can beforehand. Maybe you have a little sippy cup. You want to be careful it's not a cup they can chew the nipple off of or anything. Maybe you keep a little cup by the bed. Or maybe you have, if you think that a trip to the potty might end up popping up and you feel like you'll allow one sort of curtain call for a potty trip, that's okay. You would, at some point, if it happened, you would quietly stop what you're doing, walk your child into the potty. It has to stay dark. It has to stay quiet. You're not talking about it. Sit them on the pot. And they do what they do, or they don't. If it's a stall, they might not go. And so at some point you might be like, well, okay, nothing's going to happen here. And you take them right back to the bed and you keep going. So in other words, if you feel that it's appropriate, I mean, a lot of these kids might not even be potty trained at this point, or at least nighttime potty trained. But if you feel it's appropriate and you want to give it a try, it's fine. You just want to make sure you're not doing sticker charts in the middle of the night for potties, or whatever you've been doing as potty rewards potentially is not going to happen in the night. I have a lot to say about potty and night. I've worked actually with a few families recently about potty hang-ups about the potty at night. So I do have a lot more I could say about that. But the first thing to try is, if you have to go, it's boring, it's quiet, it's dark, they hop on the pot, and you get right back to the business of returning to bed.
Got it. Okay, and then my second group of questions before we move on came from a mom in the Q&A box, and she wants to know, how do you handle it when the toddler has a very strong preference for one parent over the other? Yeah, I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah. Yeah, so, right. Yeah, I mean, again, parents have different feelings on this. My personal opinion is that is an unreasonable demand, that the parents are the ones who decide who is on deck or on duty to put the child to bed. Maybe if child prefers mom, but mom has to be with a newborn, or mom has to work or something, dad's on duty. And if dad is perfectly ready, willing, and able to do this and follow through, I mean, if you think the other parent or caregiver is going to get frustrated or, start throwing a few choice words out there, then, maybe that's not the best fit. But assuming that both parents are, able to follow through with this approach, the child doesn't get to pick who it is. If the child is used to one parent responding and then a new parent steps in, it might feel like a setback on that night. Like if mommy and toddler have established this nice relationship after several nights, and now daddy steps in, it is going to feel like a setback for dad. And it's important that dads not take that personally, that it's normal and expected, and that they sort of push through, and so that the different caregiver can establish the relationship with the child as well.
So it is though important that both parents have a very similar response. Is that correct? That
at least at least in terms of the returning to bed, I mean, it is what it is. They get up, they go back. The child gets out, the parent brings them back. Bedtime routines could be slightly different. Like mommy might sing one song and maybe daddy reads a story. That can be slightly different. But the timing would be the same. The end would be the same, meaning there's a defined ending point. Child's had their good nights, and then if they get up, both parents would respond in the same way by returning them to bed. Did that answer? Nancy?
Yep, absolutely. Okay. Thank you.
That wasn't bad. Okay, so more, challenge me. Come on, guys. Silent return to bed guidelines continued. Again, you are expecting your child to be able to resist their sleep pressure of, yes, it is approximately 40 to 60 minutes. And so, get ready. Maybe you pour yourself a little drink of something like juice, and maybe you sit outside your child's door with a video monitor in hand, and you just get ready to be there for a while. You go to your happy place, you stay positive, and you stay calm and neutral, and you just do it. Make sure your child has a safe path to their door if they're going to be hopping out of their bed and running to the door. But even better, intervene if you can before your child is even out of the bed. You might consider using a gate at the door, which, again, if you think of it in terms of this is sort of a checkpoint for your child, it's a reminder, it's containing them in a safe environment. It's also containing them in a sleep-appropriate environment. So if your problem is that your 3-year-old is running out of his dark, cool, quiet room where the sleep cues are such that, his body is really getting a message for sleep, but he's running out into your bright living room and now getting a light cue, that's going to be a conflicting message to him. Light is a very powerful wake-up cue. So if you need to use a gate of some sort to keep your child contained in a sleep-appropriate environment, that could be really helpful. Or like in the middle of the night, if you've got sort of a stealth master who's just sneaking into your room and you don't even know it's happened, you might use a gate or even a bell on the door to help alert yourself that your child's getting up and you need to respond. Okay, and as always, this must be paired with the appropriate schedule. Remember that a huge trouble spot with toddlers is the timing of the nap. A lot of parents end up having a nice nap. The nap tends to move a little later in the toddlers. It can be nice and strong, like a good 2-hour nap, but then parents don't allow enough afternoon time of activities, natural light exposure, and play to rebuild their child's sleep pressure so that the child can fall asleep quickly and easily at bedtime. So be very careful of where your child's nap is landing in relation to their bedtime. That's extremely important. Go back and double check your child's bedtime routine. You might want to sort of revamp it a little bit, make it a little more toddler friendly. Again, here are links to toddler sleep schedules, so you can check that out. Toddler-style bedtime routines, so you can check that out. Your toddler sleep environment has to be ideal. It's cool, it's dark, it's quiet. So from a biological standpoint, your child is getting all the right messages for sleep. If you have made the switch from crib to toddler bed, or you're thinking about making the switch from crib to toddler bed, you might want to check out our webinar on that as well. And then remember, let's see. Okay, let me skip. I'll get to that in 1 second. How long this should take? Generally bedtime, because of the circadian rhythm, because of the sleep pressure. Generally, your bedtimes will come together quite quickly, 3 to 5 days. That's it. And that's, you'll be seeing real change within even just the first 3 days. For your full night consistency, if you're talking about a toddler who's over 2.5, it does tend to take longer. That time of the night, especially those early morning hours, do tend to be a more challenging time for your toddler. So expect a full 7 to 10 days before your full nights start to come together. So sometimes I'll say, kind of like the naps, your first 5 days in the morning, you might feel like nothing's happening. And you're going to want to, like be tweeting Nancy or emailing me like, why isn't this, nothing's happening? And, we would say, yes, it is happening. You got to give a little more time. And it's days 5 through 10 in the morning that you start to see the change and the improvement that you're looking for. So keep that in mind. And then if you remember, I said this pairs really well with other strategies. So, you could be talking about, my toddler it's just a getting out of bed problem. Everything else is going fine. I'm just going to keep walking her back to her mattress and be done with it. That works really well. But if you are feeling like you have a child who is maybe having a lot of anxieties, some fears, maybe you've had problems with bad dreams or a scary experience, maybe you just feel like this is too intensive approach for you and your family and you want to sort of have, start from more of a gradual place, all of that is fine. You can start by doing something like scheduled check-ins for your child. You could attempt to do this. We have a webinar recorded for how to do these supportive check-ins, offering visits to your child, coming and going from the room. This is for a child who's remaining more calm at bedtime. And so if you're trying to go with a scheduled check-in approach first as a way to get your child comfortable with you leaving the room, you could then flip into silent returning to bed if your child started to resist your scheduled check-ins. So in other words, I have a lot of families who really love the idea of the scheduled check-in approach. And again, the webinar is here. They love the idea of the scheduled check-ins. And as they get started, they find, he's still sort of, like, I think he's getting it, but he's popping out of bed. And so they sort of switch into silent returning to bed for a bit until their child gets the hang of staying in bed. And then they go back to the scheduled check-in method to finalize their strategy. Okay, so that's one option. You may also find this works really well with using a morning sound, and we have a webinar for that too. So in other words, you might find yourself doing silent return to bed at bedtime, at 2 a.m., at 4 a.m., and then in the morning, it can be very vague for your child. Well, how do I know when to get up? What's day? What's night? And so pairing it with a morning wake-up sound can really be the icing on the cake and really finalize things for you. And then the last on the sort of much higher soothing side would be to start with a trading down sleep association for your toddler. And so you might sort of mix returning your child to bed with the trading down sleep associations. Again, this webinar is linked here. But the basic premise of trading down sleep associations is alternating back and forth between two different positions of soothing. One is higher soothing, one is lower soothing, or in other words, your more soothing spot and your less soothing spot. And so let's say you're at the point where you're sitting on your child's bed and you're rubbing your child's back, and you are trying to move to a chair that's just a couple of feet away from your child's bed. And so you're trying to get yourself off your toddler's bed and onto a chair as a first step towards transitioning yourself slowly out of the room. And so as you're alternating back and forth between your two positions, the lower spot on the chair and the higher soothing spot on the bed with your child, if you go to the chair and your child starts to hop out of bed, you may have to immediately kind of hop back to the bed and gently place your child back onto the mattress in sleeping position and do your higher soothing from that point. Then you'd move back to your lower soothing, sitting at the chair. And if your child hops up, you move back to your higher soothing, lay him back down. So, I know this is sort of getting into the nitty-gritty of different families have different issues. Does your child like to hold your hair? Does your child like to rub your bra strap? Does your child like you in bed? I mean, there are all different kinds of things that we work with all the time. And, if you feel like an individual sleep consult would help you navigate your personal situation, we are always happy to help you through that as well. Okay. Oh, I forgot to say, this is my Charlotte. Napping in her crib, or napping in her big girl bed, which is now going really well for us. Nancy, did you want me to try to take some more questions?
Is this Hannah in the crib, this little one?
You know what? This is actually Charlotte.
Oh, same baby. Yeah.
Yep.
Meg has a little girl. We didn't talk about our kids at the beginning, but I have 2 teenagers. My daughter's graduating high school next week, and Meg has 4 little girls under the age of 7. Let's see. Oh, Becky wants to send in a photo. Awesome. You can tweet that to me, Becky, at Nancy Holtzman. And I do use, these are all client submitted photos. We have, let's see, let's take just one. Do we have time to take one quick question,
Yeah,
maybe?
sure.
A couple of them I've answered. Heather asked about. I answered in the chat, but she asked about what if her toddler wants to change the bedtime routine every night. Demanding a different different routine. I nipped that one in the bud. And suggested the picture chart. Where you say first you do your jammies, then you brush your teeth, then you get your 2 books, then you get and so on. But let's see. I had a question from a dad, Jason, with a 4-month-old twins, and his concern is that one of the babies had a cold last week, and now is resisting being laid down flat. The baby will fall asleep on their chest, or when propped up on a pillow, which of course we don't recommend, or in his rocker, or while being walked. But when they lay him down in the crib, he wakes up crying within a minute. And the question Dad has is whether to let him sleep in his rocker or otherwise inclined, or will that create bad habits and hinder his ability to sleep in the crib and self-soothe? And this baby is 4 months old.
Yeah, so for me, this isn't so much about a bad habit. I mean, we can change a bad habit at any time. For me, it's more about the safest place for baby to sleep. If there's no medical reason that the baby can't lie down flat in the crib, and baby was doing it before, then Jason's probably right that it just sort of became, baby sort of preferred to be sleeping snuggled up on someone's chest or propped up right next to mom and dad as opposed to lying flat in the crib. And so since this baby is 4 months now, he'd be actually old enough for sort of the earliest forms of a sleep intervention to help sort of remind him that he can sleep in his crib. And so, Jason, you might want to take a look at the Trading Down Sleep Association's webinar for babies of this age as sort of a gentle, supportive way to reteach your baby how to sleep back in the crib. So, again, I never mind. You all know, my personal choice was to partial night bed share with my kids. So it's not that I have a problem with habits. It's more, what can we recommend from a safety standpoint, and the rock and play or being propped up in a pillow is not what's recommended as the ideal place for your child to sleep. Nancy, do you want to add anything?
Particularly propped up on a pillow, and again, as Meg said, both of us bed shared with our babies, but I think I think there's a difference between being propped up on a parent's bed or on the couch on a pillow versus being positioned well in a rock and play or an inclined seat or something like that, which theoretically is safer. Even though, of course, Fisher Price is not advocating using that perhaps as a place to sleep. I think you can look at a situation and say, is my child protected from suffocation and entrapment hazards? Are they used in a harness or something like that? Are they going to be away from risk? But I also just want to say that in general, a 4-month-old baby, it's great. You had twins, and it's great that they were sleeping on their backs in the crib before his little cold. But it's not unusual to have 4-month-old babies who are resistant to sleeping on their backs in the cribs. And so things like, are you swaddling, or were you swaddling and now you're not? So maybe he needs a magic Merlin sleep suit, or maybe he still has some residual nasal congestion. So using saline or a nasal aspirator before bed, or having a humidifier running. I doubt he has an ear infection, but that's another reason why one position may be more comfortable than another after a cold, and so on. But yeah, I think
Yeah,
I would look at maybe the sleep and nap patterns webinar. I'm trying to think what would be a good webinar for him. Maybe the 6-week to 4-month age group, because that talks about how to help soothe and settle a baby into a flat position if you're working on that. Yeah. All right, I think we do need to wrap up. Thank you for your extra time today, Meg. And next week, we're going to talk about naps, everybody's favorite topic. Why naps are so tough, and what are some things that you can do to help your baby nap. Meg, you have anything to add on that?
Yeah, no, we're going to sort of revise, retweak, clarify a few things in our popular nap webinar, which is all about teaching your baby how to take better, longer, more predictable naps in the crib. So hopefully we'll get another huge response for that next week.
Yes, I think we had over 30 or 40 people attend. That was one of the most viewed webinars live, I think.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we're talking about naps. And please do help us here at ISIS by getting the word out on Facebook page. Put the link. Tell your pediatrician. Tell new moms group friends, and so on. Make sure you click over here, click onto Facebook, and click like on Facebook. Follow us on Twitter. And if you don't already, please sign up for our age and stage-based newsletter that goes through the 6th week of pregnancy up to the 3rd year of life. So we'll send you a newsletter, commercial-free newsletter every Tuesday with information that is uniquely timed to your child's age, and then links to various webinars and blog posts and things like that as well. All right, Meg, thank you. And all the attendees, thank you. It was great to see some new names in the house today. On Thursday, come back for the breastfeeding and pumping webinar, and come back next Tuesday to talk about baby naps. Bye, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.